Alright, so Anime Vanguards released about a week ago, and I feel like that's enough time to find all of the units. I've got most of the Mythics and Igris, so I decided I'm going to make a tier list on this game. Of course, why wouldn't I? So this tier list is going to be on Infinite mode, so this is not a story tier list. That will be coming out next video when I get time to do that. It might be right after this one, or it might be tomorrow, I don't really know. But yeah, let's just get started. So in the irrelevant tier, we are not really going to go over any of these. These ones just kind of suck. There's no point really using them. So yeah, let's just move on to the next tier. So in D tier, we actually only have one unit, and it's my personal pick for worst legendary in the game, which is Grim Wow. So I'm pretty sure this guy maxed, he has like the worst passive ability, and also he's a line AoE, which of course isn't that great for infinite mode. Or like any mode in general, because he's not hitting a lot of characters unless you place him on corners, and even when you place him on corners, he can't cover a lot of area because of the range size. So next in C tier, we have Kizaru and Itachi as our legendaries. Now these two are really good for early defense, but when you try and max them, their max damage is not that great, so they don't really help with the later rounds. And as for Sasuke, he is definitely the worst mythic in the game in his base form. He only does about, I believe, at max level, 2,500 damage, with a really high SPA of about 7, so he is honestly probably the worst mythic in the game unevolved, which is why he's in C tier, of course. So next in B tier, we are getting into the good characters. So this is mostly going to be unevolved mythics, but we do have two legendaries in here which do a high amount of damage. So both Gon and Goku Black do a really high amount of damage considering the fact that they're legendaries, and their passives, which increase their damage the longer the game goes on, are both really good for the early game defense and decent for late game. As for Naruto Sage, he's probably the second worst mythic in the game. He has high range, but his AoE circle is small, and so is his damage. Sunjin Woo is also in the same boat, except his damage increases the longer the round goes on, with a cap of 40%, so he is slightly better than Naruto. Cha-In has worse damage than both of those guys, except for the fact that she has a massive AoE cone, so that really helps place her higher up than those two. And as for Obito and Vegeta Super, they both have an insane amount of damage for an unevolved mythic, both doing about like 5,000 each, with a low SPA of 4 and 3. Now, Igris Unevolved is probably one of the best unevolved units in the game, for the obvious fact that it's a secret and it does a ton of damage. So yeah, it is really expensive to max, but considering this is an infinite tier list, it don't really matter since you're going to have a lot of money anyway. So A tier is going to be mostly support units, but we also have some high damage mythics here. Starting us off is Alucard, the normal base version. Whilst he doesn't do a lot of damage, he has a really big AoE circle, and it's full AoE, so anything that goes in there is just going to take so much damage, so I think it's better than all of the characters in B tier for like wiping high amounts of characters at once. As for Sasuke, he's completely carried by his passive stun ability. He has really bad damage, really bad SPA, but his ability lets him stun people, so that's why he's up here. As for Vegeta Super, he's honestly not that much better than his base form. His base form was one of the best mythics, if not the best mythic. However, when he gets evolved, he gets significantly worse, only doing a tiny bit more damage and having a much worse passive ability. And on his final upgrade, he becomes a line AoE, which is obviously much worse than the circle one that his predecessor had. Honestly, I would just avoid fully maxing him, so you keep the circle AoE, because that's going to be a lot more effective than using the line AoE that he gets on his final upgrade. And it's not even that much of a damage decrease, because it's only like 2,000 less damage if you keep him on the circle AoE upgrade instead of the 10,000 you'd usually get by fully maxing him. So Naruto's Six Tails form is a circle AoE at max that only does about 8,000 damage. His SPA is around 4 seconds, so it fires off pretty quickly, but the main reason he's up here is because of his passive ability, which every time he hits someone, his damage goes up by 2%, and that stacks until 36%, where he can no longer get any more damage. So after doing all that, he can basically do around 12,000 damage instead of the initial 8,000. So the next one might be a little controversial, because some people are going to want me to put it a lot higher. So this is Speedwagon. He is the only money unit in the game, and personally I feel like for infinites, money units aren't that important, because if you are going on long enough, you're gonna get that money naturally anyway. it only just makes early defense that much easier. So that's why he's only an A and not an S tier, even though he is a really good money giver and support unit. And the final character in A tier is Haruka Rin, which is a buff unit, and I believe the only one in the game apart from its evolution. And considering the fact that it has an evolution, it should be pretty clear why this one is an A instead of S. Alright, so finally S tier. Starting off, this might be a bit confusing, but I am putting Pain in S tier. So I feel like he's one of the best support units in the game for Infinite Mode. Because if you don't max him and only get him to upgrade 3, he can cover such a large area with his full AoE, especially if you get a range buff like Marksman. Because every time he hits an enemy, he pushes them back, and that pushback lasts about 3 seconds. So it extends your time to kill a unit by about 6 seconds for every single Pain on the board. Because he pushes them back for 3 seconds, and then they spend another 3 seconds getting back to where they were. So I feel like he's a really, really good unit for Infinite. As well as that, because he's a full AoE, even though his damage is low at only like 500, he can still get a ton of damage because he is a full AoE. If you know the correct placements and how to get like most of his AoE covering the paths, I feel like he's a really good support unit for Infinite Mode. And next up is Obito Awakened. Now, Obito Awakened has a lot of DPS, and simply he's just outscaled by the other members on this list, which is why he's so down low on S tier. So that's all I'm really going to cover. Like, he's pretty big AoE, does a lot of damage, so yeah, solid S tier. Now next up is Haruka Rin, Evolution. I couldn't get a screenshot of the evolution because my friend wouldn't send it to me. I hate that guy. But yeah, this is just a better version of Haruka Rin. I believe it buffs range as well as damage, so obviously it's going to be ranked higher than the original. So yeah, that's just why it's an S tier. Solid S tier buff unit, only one in the game. Real good. Okay, alright, now this is going to be a little bit confusing for some people. But next up is Alligator, or Crocodile, if you watch One Piece. So, basically, every time Crocodile hits someone, as soon as he's placed down, he slows them for 3 seconds. So whilst the slow isn't permanent, if you sell him and replace him on top of a boss that you can't kill, he will continue to slow that boss. And that slowness reduces their speed by 50%. So you're going to get like twice the amount of damage on that boss just by selling or replacing crocodiles, or if all of you bring it and spread it out across the map. Because at his max upgrade, his attack speed is lower than 3 seconds, so he can constantly keep applying that 3-second debuff over and over and over. So yeah, that's why I think he's one of the best units in the game and deserves a place in S tier, even though he has no damage. Okay, so the next places are going to be pretty obvious. We have Sun Jin Woo, which is a summoner unit, and also has a ton of damage. And as well as all that, he buffs any Igris within his range, so pairing him up with Igris is really, really good. Which is why, next place, we have Igris, which is a high damage full AoE unit that gets buffed when surrounded by Sun Jin Woos. Up to 25% of his damage is increased. Oh, I suppose I shouldn't word it like that. It's more like his damage is increased by 25%, which is a lot. Especially in a full AoE unit that covers most of the map. Okay, that's over-exaggerating. He covers like 50 range with Marksman, so he covers a large area, is the point. And the final unit I'm going to talk about, Alucard. I may have told a little bit of a lie earlier, saying Haruka Rin is the only buff unit in the game, because I do believe Alucard is a full AoE buff unit that also summons. So he's Sun Jin Woo, Haruka Rin, and Igris all in one. He is by far the best unit in the game right now, even though his damage may not be the best. So yeah, I feel like that's all the units in the game. If I missed one, comment. If you don't agree with something, also comment, because this game just came out, so these rankings may not be completely accurate, and I would appreciate some feedback on them. I did talk this over with my friends who also played the game. It's not like I just made this without thinking or anything. So yeah, like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.